Welcome to Python tutorials with Simplilearn. I'm Anjali and today we look into the if-else statement in Python. So if-else is a decision-making statement and there are various formats of this. So let's begin and one by one we look at each of these formats. So the first one and the most primitive form of the if-else statement is the if statement. Here's the syntax for if. So you have the keyword if followed by the condition and then we have the double colons. On the next line you can put in your statements which will be executed if this condition results in true. So all these statements are indented slightly towards the right. This indicates that these statements are within the if block. So how exactly does this if statement work? Let's look at the flowchart to understand this. So at first we have the test expression or the condition. Now if this condition results in true, that means that the statements which are inside the if block, those will be executed. If this condition results in false, then the control of the program will skip to the statements after the if block. And in either case, the program then proceeds to print these statements right after the if block. So we'll better understand this through an example. I'll move on to my Jupyter notebook where I'll demonstrate a code. Now I'll have a variable a which is equal to the value 20. So I'll write an if statement, the keyword if followed by the condition, and my condition here is if a is greater than 50. So if a is greater than 50, we want to enter the if statement or the if block, and in here I'll print out this is the if body. And if a is not greater than 50, we would skip this entire part and directly move on to the statement which precedes the if block. And here I'll have the statement print this is outside the if block. So I'll run this program now. So in this particular case, the value of a was 20, which is obviously less than 50, which is why we did not enter the if block. We simply skipped the statement after the if block. Now if I make the value of a equal to 60 and then run the program, you see that we have entered the if block. So this print statement here, that is the body. So this print statement which says this is the if body is printed, and then the control moves on to the next statement which is outside the if block, which is this is outside the if block. So both these statements are printed. This is how if works. So the next format for if is the if-else statement. So far we could specify the statements that will be executed if a condition is true. Now in case of if-else, we can specify the statements which will be executed in case the condition is true and a separate set of statements in case the condition is false. So that is the part that comes under else. Now let's look at the syntax here. There's if followed by the condition and then the double colons just as before, under which you have your statements which will be executed slightly indented to the right, and following the if block you have the else block. So if your condition results in false, the execution of the program moves on to the else block, and under the else block again you have your statements which will be slightly indented to the right. So here we'll have a look at the flowchart for the if-else statement. If the test expression or the condition results in true, we move on to the body of if, and the statements within this body of if will be executed, after which we'll move on to the statements just below if. If the condition initially is false, then we'll move on to the else block and we'll have a separate set of statements within the else block which will be executed, after which again we'll move back to the statements just below the if. So again we have a demo here to better understand how if-else works, where we'll print out if a number is odd or even. So initially I have a variable I which is equal to 20, and then I'll have the if statement, and then I'll have the if-else statement to check if I is odd or even. So I have I mod 2 equal to 0. So if I mod 2 is equal to 0, that means the number is even because I is completely divisible by 2. So in that case I'll print out this is the if block and I is an even number. And if I mod 2 is not equal to 0, we need to print out that I is odd. So initially we did not have this capability with just if statement, but when you have the else too, if I mod 2 is not 0, the control goes to the else statement and only the statements which are inside the else block gets printed. So here I have print, this is the else block, and then print I is an odd number. Now let's run our program. So as we know, 20 is an even number, so I mod 2 results in 0. We go inside the if statement and these two statements get printed. This is the if block and I is an even number. Now I'll change the value of I to 23, which is an odd number. So then the statements inside the else block gets printed. Now let's look at the nested if. So nested if is when you have an if statement within an if statement. This kind of a situation often occurs when you have to filter a variable multiple times. So let's look at the syntax for nested if. You have if followed by condition and the double colon just as before. And now within the if statement, indented again to the right, you'll have the second condition. So you'll have if and your second condition, which is condition 2, followed by colons. Now you can have as many levels of nesting as required, but of course the more number of nestings you have, the less optimized the program is. So you should always try to minimize or if possible completely avoid nested ifs. Now we look at a flowchart for nested if. You have your first expression, let's call this expression 1. If this results in true, then the control moves on to the second expression, that is the nested if. Now if this condition results in true, you'll have the execution for the body of if. If this condition results in false, you'll have the execution for the body of else. Now of course this else is not mandatory. You can either have an else statement or completely avoid it altogether. The control, however, after else follows to the statements right after the if block. Now I'll move on to my Jupyter notebook to show yet another demo for nested if. So here I'll have a number, and first I need to filter this number as to whether it's less than 25 or greater than 25. If this number is greater than 25, then I need to also specify. So here I'll take an integer, and my first filter would be if the integer is less than or greater than 25. If this integer is less than 25, I further need to specify if this number is even or odd. And if the number is greater than 25, I just need to print out that yes, this is greater than 25. So let's begin. I'll have a variable c. And for now, I'll have the value 21 stored in C. Now, if C is less than 25, I'll first check if C is an even number. So if C is less than 25 and then C mod 2 is equal to 0, I'll print out C is an even number less than 25. C is an even number less than 25. Else, that is if C mod 2 is not equal to 0, then I'll print out C is an odd number less than 25. Now, if C is not less than 25, that is, if C is greater than 25, that would come under the else block, which matches with our parent if statement. So, if you notice the indentation here, this else statement, which goes with this if statement, is indented at the same position. And on the other hand, our parent if statement, which is paired with this else statement here, are indented at 0th or the same location. So now under my parent else statement, I'll just print out C is greater than 25. Let me now run this program, and C is 21. So it gets into this if statement here because it's less than 25. And then C mod 2, which is 21 mod 2, is not equal to 0. So the control moves to this else statement, and C is an odd number less than 25 gets printed. If I had 50 here, run my program again, this if statement would not get executed. Control would transfer to this else statement here, and C is greater than 25 gets printed. Now, so far with if and with if else, we had a very binary approach. That is, if this condition results in true, print out the statement A. If this results in false, print out statement B. Now, what if we have various other conditions? For example, we have a number A, and we need to check if A is within the range 1 to 10. In which case, we need to print out that this variable is within the range 1 to 10. Else, if it's within the range 10 to 20, we need to print that out. Now, if it's in the range 20 to 30, we need to print that out. That is, it's in the range 20 to 30. So in this case, we cannot just stick to if-else statement. We need something more. We need something which has more steps. And that is where if, elif, else ladder comes into picture. So here, if we look at the syntax, we have your if condition first, the semicolons followed by your statements, and under this we do not directly have the else statement, but we have another keyword, the elif. So the elif statement lets you provide another condition and not just go with the false of if. So you have elif and then condition 2, under which you have statement. Now you can have any number of elif statements. And finally you'll have your else statement, which will be executed if none of the previous statements have been executed. So we'll have a look at the flowchart to understand basically how the if, elif, else ladder works. You have your first condition, expression 1. If expression 1 results in true, body of if gets executed. and immediately you move on to the statement which is right after the else statement. If your expression 1 results in false, that means any of the preceding elif or else condition could result in true. So the program keeps checking all these conditions. So your next elif condition is checked, which is expression 2. And then if expression 2 results in true, then the body of this elif statement is executed and no further statements are checked in the if elif else block. Directly you move on to the statement right after these blocks. If none of the previous elif conditions or the if conditions match, the control moves on to the else statement and the else statement will definitely get executed. So once the else statement is executed, the control moves to the statements which are right after the if elif else block. So that is how the control flows in if elif else ladder. We'll have a look at another demo to better understand this. So here I'll have a variable, say var, which stores a single alphabet, which is for now Z, and then I'll have the if elif else ladder to check if this variable or if this value stored within the variable is a vowel or a consonant, moreover which specific vowel it is. So first I have if var equal to a, print this is a vowel and print this is the vowel a. Now we have 5 consonants, that's A, E, I, O, U. So we cannot directly go with an else statement here. We need to check the condition for each of these alphabets or these vowels. So now I'll have the elif var equal to E, print this is the vowel E, just copy paste this. Elif again, this time for I, then for O, U, and finally, if your variable is not equal to any of these 5 letters, then we just print out that it's a consonant. So that can come in the else part. So if none of these statements on top execute, the control directly comes to else statement and else definitely gets executed. So here we'll print out this is a consonant. Before I run this program, a small correction. It should be double equal to. Single equal to is used for assignment. Okay, now we can run this code and it prints out this is a consonant. So var healthy value Z, which is of course a consonant. I'll put in a vowel now, say O, run the code again and prints out this is a vowel O. So this works perfectly fine. So now that we have looked at the various forms of if, let's start with some exercises. So first we'll have a program to find the greatest of 3 numbers. Of course we can use the max function for this. It's a 1-line code, but we'll not do that here. We'll actually type out a program for it. Now this is a very typical example of how you can use the if elif ladder. So I'll have 3 variables, A equal to 10, B equal to 15 and C equal to 20. Now my first if condition would be if A is greater than B and A is greater than C. Now if A is greater than both B and C, obviously A is the greatest number. The greatest number is A. Elif. So the condition for that would be if B is greater than A and B is greater than C. In which case we'll print out the greatest number is B. And finally, if neither A or B are the greatest numbers, then obviously it's C, and that we can just put down in the else statement. The greatest number is C. Now in this program, we have not considered if 2 of the numbers or maybe all 3 of them are equal. Since the whole point of this exercise is to check your if-else concepts or to understand them better, let's ignore that part for now. Run this code. And the greatest number is C, which is obvious. C is 20. So what happens here is the control first goes to the first if statement and checks A is greater than B. Now if A is greater than B, then only will it proceed to check if A is greater than C. So that's the thing with the AND statement. For this if condition to be true, both the right hand and the left hand side of AND should result in true. So if the first condition, that is A greater than B, results in false, then the statement won't even check if A is greater than C or not. Now if A is greater than both of them, you have the greatest number is A. Now if statement does not result in true, which in our case it won't, it moves on to the elif statement. If B is greater than A and B is greater than C, then the greatest number is B. Again, in our particular situation here, elif also results in false and the control moves on to the else statement and it prints the else statement. So the else statement in the case of if elif else ladder is like the default statement in case of switch. I hope that helps you understand this better. Now we can do the same program using nested if. So how is that done? So here I'll have a variable AA, which is equal to say 350, BB equal to 250, and CC, which is equal to 300. Now my first if statement will check if AA is greater than BB. So AA greater than BB. Now if AA is greater than BB, we'll check if AA is greater than CC. So that would be a nested if. And if AA is greater than BB and AA is greater than CC, which is the nested part, then within this, I can print out that AA is the greatest number. AA. And if this is not the case, that is if our second if statement does not result in true, we have nothing to print. It means that A is somewhere between B and C, and we do not need to print this. So directly we'll move on to the elif that pairs up with our outside if. And I'll refer to AA, BB and CC as ABC. So elif B is greater than C. Now under this, if B is greater than C, I need to check if B is greater than A2. Now under this, if B is greater than C, I need to check if B is greater than A2. So I'll have a nested if under this elif where I'll check if B is greater than A. And if both of these statements result in true, we can say that B is the greatest number we have. So BB is the greatest number. And finally, if this if statement or this elif statement did not result in true, then we'll have a else statement here, which will definitely be executed. And this would print out that C is the greatest number. So here we do not need a nested if statement because of course if the previous two statements did not result in true, else will, which will say CC is the greatest number. So this is a program. This is the same as the above program to find the largest of the three numbers, but here we have used a nested if. Now a small modification I can make here is instead of printing out the variable name, you can also print out the value which is stored within the variable. So just go with %d is the greatest number and %d will then be your placeholder over here. So after the quotes, you can just put in your variable name AA and same here in case of CC. Have your integer placeholder and the variable. We're now ready to run this program. So it prints out correctly 350 is the greatest number, which is the value stored in A. So our very first if statement itself resulted in true. Moved on to the nested if statement. Again, AA was greater than CC. So that too resulted in true. And this print statement here is what got executed. So you can also have print statements in between your if statement and the nested if statement. For example, here I can have a print statement which prints out that A is greater than BB. So I can say %d is greater than %d, and these two placeholders will hold the values of the variables AA and BB. And this is how you do that. So run my code now. Small error, there's no comma here. So as you see, when this print statement gets executed, it does not destroy the flow of your nested if. Now we'll have one last exercise. Here we need to print out if a number is divisible by 2, 3 or 5. So I'll have a variable, say d, which is equal to 15 initially. Of course, I can take this from the user too. And I need to check if d mod 2 is equal to 0. So d mod 2 equal to 0. If that is true, then I can print out that d is divisible by 2. So I'll say it is divisible by 2. Now if d mod 3 equal to 0. So if it's not divisible by 2, is it divisible by 3? I'll print out it is divisible by 3. If it's not divisible by 3, is it divisible by 5? If so, I'll print out it is divisible by 5. And if none of this works out, I'll have an else statement printing out the number is not divisible by 2, 3 or 5. So at first look, this program seems to work fine. Now here's the problem. The very default value that we have taken 15 is divisible by both 3 and 5. Now the problem with if elif else ladder is that if this if statement results in true, it will not check any of these further conditions. It will directly skip to the statement that follows this entire ladder block. So if suppose our value was 12, if d mod 2, so 12 mod 2 will result in 0 and it will print out this is divisible by 2 and then it will skip all the other elif or else statements. We'll run this code And as you see here, it's just printed divisible by 2. But 12 is also divisible by 3. So in this kind of a situation, what we do is we do not go with the if, elif, else ladder because that will not work here. We instead just go with the if statement. So if you just go with the simple if statement, even if this statement results in true, the program will still check this next if statement. So we say if d mod 2 is equal to 0, we'll print out it is divisible by 2. If d mod 3 is equal to 0, we'll print out it's divisible by 3. And the same thing with 5. Now, if it's not divisible by any of these 3, we need to print out that the number is not divisible by 2, 3 or 5. Now, here's another problem. So this else statement here is coupled with this if statement. If this if statement results in true, this else statement will not be printed, which works perfectly fine because if the number is divisible by 5, we just need to print out that it is divisible by 5. But what if the number is not divisible by 5? Then automatically the control comes to this else statement here and this statement gets printed. Now that is the very case if we take d as 12. See, I run this code here and d mod 2 is equal to 0. So the statement it is divisible by 2 gets executed. Again, it is divisible by 3 gets executed. But d mod 5 is not equal to 0. This makes the else statement to execute and this executes that the number is not divisible by 2, 3 or 5, which is wrong because our number is divisible by 2 and 3. So now we need a slightly different approach. So what we do here is we'll introduce a counter variable, count, which is equal to 0. Now every time a number is divisible by 2, 3 or 5, we'll increment count. So count plus equal to 1. Now this is the same as writing count equal to count plus 1. This is a shorthand and similarly if d mod 3 is equal to 0, I'll increment. Here too, I'll have an increment. And here, I will not have the else statement, but instead I'll say if count is equal to 0, then you print out the statement that it is not divisible by 2, 3 or 5. Let's run this code now and see how it works just fine. So 12 is divisible by 2, it is divisible by 3. We'll go with another number 15, divisible by 3 and 5. So if I go with 7, run the code, the number is not divisible by 2, 3 or 5. So I hope you understood how if else or just the if statement or the if elif else ladder works. Also the nested if. If you have any doubts, please post them in the comment section below and we'll definitely get back to you. If you like this video, please hit the like button. Also subscribe to our channel if you have not yet, as we have a lot more great videos coming up for you. So stay tuned and I'll see you all next time.
Hi there, if you like this video, subscribe to the Simplilearn YouTube channel and click here to watch similar videos. To nerd up and get certified, click here.